causes and responses to chemical accidents. 1. A shocking day in Laboratory A. On February 28, 2018, the bottom of a nitric acid container, which had been stored in the laboratory for more than 4 years, started to crack. Nitric acid leaked, and yellow gas of nitrogen oxide began to rise. The researchers saw the yellow gas and mistook it as fire, and caused a great commotion with fire extinguishers to suppress fire. The situation was determined by the firefighters who got the call and arrived at the site. No human damage was caused, but the researchers needed a while to recover from the shock. What do you think about the case? In addition to this one, there are many accidents in laboratories. It's important to know the causes of these accidents and prepare for them. The preceding case was caused by nitric acid leaking from a container cracked by external shock, neglectful storage in the laboratory, decomposition by sunlight, and a chemical reaction between the leaked nitric acid with another substance. This produced the yellow gas of nitrogen oxide. The researchers mistook it as fire and incorrectly responded by spraying a fire extinguisher. Luckily, only a small amount of nitric oxide leaked, so any secondary accident was prevented. But since incorrect responses to accidents may lead to greater damage, correct understanding and response are required. Then, what kind of preparations do we need to correctly respond to an accident? First, understand the hazards and risks of chemicals display response equipment to handle contact with or the release of chemicals, such as emergency shower, eye shower, emergency kit, absorptive fabric, etc., and conduct regular safety trainings to prepare against chemical accidents. Before our main learning, let's check out how to respond to chemical accidents. To respond to a chemical accident, we should accurately diagnose the cause of the chemical accident, have access to response equipment and be aware of their locations, and understand how to act according to the respond procedures to chemical spill. In this session, we will examine the necessity of preparations against chemical accidents, how to respond to chemical accidents, safety equipment and how to use them, and the chemical accident response procedures. By doing these, we can understand the risk of chemical accidents and the need for preparations against accidents. Also, we will understand how to correctly use the equipment to prepare against accidents. Also, we will understand the response procedure to chemical accidents to minimize damage through timely response. Then, let's begin our learning by reviewing the learning objectives. Necessity of preparations against chemical accidents. Accidents in laboratories in South Korea continue to rise. 175 cases in 2014, 215 cases in 2015, and 270 cases in 2016. 83.5 of these accidents were caused by unstable behavior and human error as managerial causes. Accidents are highly likely to be caused by human error because research activities in multiple experimental fields are being conducted by many people. And unlike industrial processes, most experiments are directly controlled by humans. For these human errors, conduct safety training sessions to enhance the safety consciousness of those engaged in research activities and conduct pre-hazard risk analysis and safety checkups to remove or reduce hazards. Inadequate response to chemical accidents may increase the likelihood of secondary accident and damages. For example, there was a fire in a college laboratory with sodium in South Korea on October 11, 2012. Fortunately, a student informed the firefighters of the sodium stored in the laboratory and the fire was extinguished without using water. If any firefighter without such knowledge had tried to use water to extinguish the fire, sodium could have reacted with water and exploded, leading to a serious secondary accident. Accidents are highly likely to be caused by human errors because various experiments are repeated and directly controlled by humans. Therefore, plan how to act in case of an accident and prepare appropriate responses to quickly respond and minimize damage in case of an accident. Therefore, proactive actions are required in laboratories to prevent accidents in advance. For this, only purchase and use necessary chemicals in laboratories. Install and use the safety facilities, such as fume hood, arm hood, glove box, etc., to minimize chemical exposure. Wear appropriate personal protective equipment when handling. Next, let's study the required measures for storing, handling, transporting, and disposal of chemicals to prevent chemical accidents. First, consider the usage of chemicals and only store the minimal amount. Classify chemicals by their properties in an appropriate closed storage cabinet, considering their explosiveness, inflammability, corrodability, combustibility, toxicity, etc. Also, if the container has been damaged or flipped, prevent external release with an anti-release tray made of materials that do not react with chemicals. Next, ensure easy identification of chemicals stored in a closed storage cabinet by placing large bottles at the back and small bottles at the front, and ensure labels are facing forward. For the same type of chemicals, place older ones at the front to use first. And if possible, use the original chemical container provided at the time of purchase. If chemicals are divided into small amounts into other containers, produce and attach a warning sign on the original container. To move chemicals, check the safety and reactivity of the chemical in advance, and do not transport any chemical in an unstable state. When transporting, refrain from carrying the chemical container with your arms, but use a cart or bucket for transportation. When using a cart, ensure that the wheels do not stop or bounce by using sufficiently large wheels. If you have to use an elevator, use the freight elevator at all times. When handling chemicals, minimize release by handling it in a safety facility, such as a fume hood. Since it is a space for experiments, the fume hood cannot be used to store chemicals. To handle chemicals in a fume hood, place the chemical at least 15 centimeters inside. When using a fume hood, check the flow of air with a measuring device or tissue. Keep the chassis closed or at the bottom at all times. Also, wear a gown and goggles in the laboratory at all times. According to the properties of the chemical, select and wear chemical-resistant gloves and breathing equipment. Tie up or wear a hair net for long hair. Wear a pair of shoes that cover the top of the feet. For glass apparatus that contain chemicals, select the product with the least risk of damage. Check for the presence of any cracks and ensure that the size is sufficient. Waste from laboratories is commonly classified into organic solvent, acid, alkaline, and catalyst for disposal. For such chemical disposal, prepare against release by installing an anti-release tray. Avoid neglectful storage of the chemical for a long time by disposing of them regularly. If the laboratory uses various chemicals in small amounts, avoid mixing different chemicals when disposing. Responding to a chemical accident. to prepare against chemical accidents, display the directions on how to respond to chemical spill in the laboratory, and read them. Be well informed about how to install, store, and use safety equipment. Also, in case of accident, assess the risks and take immediate actions accordingly. Let's look at each of them. First, display the information on the risks of chemicals, responses to release, and response to fire in the laboratory for easy reference, and read them. Frequently update this information to the latest and share the information among members. This information can be acquired from the Material Safety Data Sheet, MSDS, warning signs, technical reports, references, etc. Secondly, in order to appropriately respond to contact with or release of chemicals, install and store safety facilities in or in the proximity of the laboratory. Conduct training sessions on how to use and take responses with them. The response equipment for skin contact with chemicals include emergency shower, eye washer, and first aid kit. Then, how to react if chemicals have contacted with skin. First, if the chemicals have been sprayed to the whole body, cleanse the chemical off using the emergency shower. If the chemical has been smeared on clothing, take the clothing off and shower for at least 15 minutes. And if the chemical has been sprayed in the eye, force the eyelids open with your fingers and cleanse at the eye washer at least for 15 minutes. If neither emergency shower or eye washer is available, cleanse the smeared skin or eye in flowing water from tap or shower. Next, prepare safety items to respond to a chemical spill in the laboratory. Some examples are absorbent, counteragent, and spill kit. Then, how to use these safety items. First, an absorbent is a safety item that absorbs and removes leaked chemical in pad, socks, pillow, and powder. Use the pad when a small amount of chemical has been leaked. Use the socks to lock and absorb the chemical. And use the pillow to absorb a large amount of chemical, while the powder can be used to absorb the chemical and interrupt the flow. But it may be more difficult than other items to remove it after use. Next, a counteragent absorbs the leaked chemical and neutralizes and stabilizes it through chemical reaction. Such counteragent is divided into powder and liquid. Because liquid counteragent is problematic in flow and mixture for use, powder counteragent is more commonly used in laboratories. Special care is required for handling because it is treated with slightly acidic and alkaline substance. Also, heat may rise during the chemical reaction to treat the leaked chemical. But when the neutralization has completed, it can be safer than absorbents in the process of disposal. To select an absorbent or counteragent for acid, alkaline, organic solvent, or oil, obtain the appropriate product for the chemical used in the laboratory. When handling the leaked chemical using either absorbent or counteragent, consider the properties of the chemical and wear personal protective equipment, such as goggles, gown, or chemical-resistant clothing and protective gloves. Dispose of the absorbent and/or counteragent used for the leaked chemical as designated waste. Appropriate fire extinguishers must be installed in the laboratory as preparation for chemical fire. The types of fire extinguisher are A-class general fire, B-class oil fire, C-class electric fire, and D-class metal fire. The fire types related to chemicals are general fire, oil fire, and metal fire. Be aware of the different types of applicable fire extinguishers for each type of fire. Fire extinguishers have labels that indicate their applicable type of fire marked with an A, B, C, or D. Check the letter on the fire extinguisher and display it in the laboratory. There are powder fire extinguishers, CO2 fire extinguishers, halon fire extinguishers, portable fire extinguishers, and metal fire extinguishers. ABC powder fire extinguishers are placed in laboratories for general fire, oil fire, and electric fire. However, don't forget to have a dry sand, expanded vermiculite, metal fire extinguisher in preparation against metal fire for researches that use metals such as lithium, sodium, and potassium. Third, be well informed about the handling process in case of chemical accident. You will need to assess the risks immediately and take action. In order to act immediately in case of a chemical accident, plan for reactive measures, such as an emergency contact list, emergency exits, and accident response equipment in advance, and conduct drills with those engaged in research activities under the leadership of the laboratory director. In the laboratory, it is good to display the potential reactions between chemical properties and a flowchart about handling accidents in a conspicuous location. To handle a chemical accident, consider the size of the release, amount of the chemical, chemical properties such as toxicity, volatility, corrodability, etc., substances that can handle release, and the training status and handling capacities of the responder. Chemical accident response procedures. When a chemical is leaked, take timely actions to minimize damage. The measure to be taken should be chosen after assessing the size of the chemical spill, its properties, surroundings, etc. For example, when comparing two cases, one where the chemical has been leaked inside the fume hood versus on the floor of the laboratory, you may avoid evacuation in the first case, even if the same amount has been leaked in the fume hood. In case of a chemical spill in the laboratory, notify others of the situation and ensure evacuation. Isolate the leaked region. Specifically, check if there are any patients or affected persons, and check the availability of emergency actions if needed. If any emergency measure is available, provide appropriate treatment and assistance. If emergency measures are unavailable, isolate the leaked region. On the other hand, if there is no patient or affected person, assess the risks of the situation. For small release, handle and remove the chemical and report the accident. For large release, isolate the leaked region immediately and contact the safety department and fire station. Next, let's examine each response to accidents. First, notify others of the situation and evacuate. If a chemical accident breaks out, notify your laboratory colleagues. And if the laboratory is part of a larger facility, notify other laboratories of the situation and evacuate. If immediate action cannot be taken, install a warning sign of the chemical spill to prevent access to the region. Second, isolate the leaked region. Prevent the chemical from being evaporated and subsequently spread to other laboratories by closing the entrance and seal the laboratory. If the air conditioner is in operation in the building to circulate the air, contact the related department to stop the air conditioner and take necessary actions to ventilate only. Third, you need to treat any patient or affected person. If a chemical has come into contact with skin or eye through the chemical accident, use the emergency shower or eye shower to wash the chemical off at least for 15 minutes. It is very important to start washing immediately. Also, never use any substance of opposite properties to neutralize leaked acid or alkaline, because damage may spread by the heat through chemical reaction. If a chemical has been swallowed, wash your mouth with water and go to a hospital and get treatment from a physician. The easiest way to remove chemical from the stomach is vomiting. However, inducing vomiting must be done under the instructions of a physician when the patient's consciousness is clear. Do not vomit if immediate admission into an emergency room is available. If the patient shows poisoning symptoms as a result of exposure to the stream or gas of the chemical, first move the patient into fresh air, and then perform necessary measures. Perform cardiac massage if CPR is required. Do not perform artificial respiration, considering the possibility of poisoning by harmful gas. Fourth, assess the risks of the situation. In order to take appropriate measures after or during a chemical accident, judge the degree of the risks of the situation. To do that, consider the harmfulness of the chemical, leaked amount, and leaked place. In case of a chemical accident, determine how high the risk is and take measures appropriate to the harmfulness, leaked amount, and place. Then apply the following. Regarding harmfulness, the risk is high if the leaked chemical may affect human health, safety, or the environment. The chemical has not been identified or cannot be controlled due to the valve failure, etc. The risk is high if the leaked amount involves mercury or hydrofluoric acid more than 40%, a combustible liquid, highly concentrated corrodible substance, or volatility of 2 liters or more, and 100 grams or more of highly reactive solid matter. The risk is high if the leaked place is publicly accessible, somewhere that does not deal with chemicals in normal routines or is outside of the laboratory. The person who is responsible for safe handling of the leaked chemical in the laboratory should ask themselves and carry out the following questions. If the risk is significant or independent, handling is difficult, notify others of the situation and evacuate. Then, report to the safety department and fire station to take reactive measures. In accordance with the Toxic Chemicals Control Act, report to the Environmental Office in the jurisdiction if any more than 5 liters or 5 kilograms of a chemical has been leaked, regardless of the size of human damage or environmental impact. Fifth, this is about how to handle and remove the chemical. If any chemical has been leaked in the laboratory and the risk is judged to be low after the risk assessment, directly handle the chemical after preparing response equipment for handling and removal and wearing the personal protective equipment. Here, the equipment may vary depending on the type of leaked chemical. Therefore, it is important to understand the leaked chemical accurately before selecting the equipment. Some examples of response equipment are absorbent, counteragent, fire extinguisher, pH paper, gas detector, tongs, disposal container, plastic bags for disposal, etc. Personal protective equipment includes gowns, chemical-resistant clothing, security glasses, goggles, security fabric, chemical-resistant gloves, gas mask, chemical-resistant overshoes, and rubber boots. Chemical handling and removal should be done by at least 2 persons. Once the handlers have prepared the response equipment and worn the personal protective equipment, enter the leaked place and check the site. If ventilation is needed, use the local ventilator or open the windows to ventilate. When the windows are to be opened, instruct other laboratories to close their windows. Let's examine the order of chemical handling and removal. First, pour socks or powder around the leaked region to prevent further spread. If there are pieces of broken glass, use the tongs to put them into the waste can. Next, use absorptive pad, pillows, and powder to absorb the leaked chemical or apply a counteragent to neutralize. Collect the absorbed and neutralized absorbent or counteragent and dispose of them as designated waste in waste containers or bags. And clean the leaked region using detergent and water. Dispose of the disposable personal protective equipment in disposal bags and designated waste. If they are reusable, cleanse them for reuse. Lastly, the person who handled or removed the chemical should use soap or shampoo to clean their hands and take a shower. Lastly, report the accident. After handling the accident, report the accident to the related department. Report the cause of the accident, name and amount of the leaked chemical, damage status, etc., orally or on paper with a designated form if available. To summarize, it is important to take proactive measures, such as preparing safety equipment and wearing personal protective equipment to prevent chemical accidents in the laboratory. Discuss an accident handling plan in advance among the members. Install safety facilities and items, such as emergency shower, first aid kit, absorbent, counteragent, etc., to minimize damages and understand how to use them. Through this series of actions, you can prevent accidents and minimize human and property damages in case of an accident. In other words, the best way to prevent accidents and minimize damages is for the laboratory director, and those engaged in research activities to take interest in the practice safety.
Check with quiz to make sure you understand the course.
Let's review what we have learned today.